Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Munchetti.
Our headlines today. No more quarantine for people entering the UK from Portugal, but those returning from Croatia face 2 weeks isolation.
We'll speak to holidaymakers, businesses abroad, the Transport Secretary and an airport boss about what the quarantine policy could mean.
Overstretched and undervalued, a survey claims nearly half of nurses have considered quitting since the outbreak of COVID.
Joe Biden promises to lead America out of what he called its season of darkness as he formally accepts the Democratic Party presidential nomination.
This is our moment. This is our mission. May history be able to say that the end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight.
Good morning. Scottish fans could be watching live sport in stadiums by next month. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says limited numbers with strict physical distancing could be allowed inside stadia from the 14th of September.
Good morning. We've got an unseasonably windy spell of weather on the cards for the next couple of days. The wind's strong enough to bring some disruption today, and there's the threat of coastal flooding too. I'll keep you up to date with the latest throughout the morning.
Good morning, it's Friday the 21st of August. Our top story today, the Portuguese Prime Minister has offered a warm welcome to British visitors after his country was added to the UK's list of travel corridors, meaning there is no need to quarantine after returning home.
The travel industry, though, says the relaxation comes too late to save its summer. The new rules, effective from 4 a.m. tomorrow, also impose quarantine orders on anyone returning from Croatia, Austria, Trinidad and Tobago. Simon Jones has more.
The beaches in Portugal look set to get a whole lot busier. The country has been added to the UK's safe travel list as coronavirus cases there fall. Last year, it attracted 2.5 million British tourists. Portugal's Prime Minister tweeted to the Portuguese community in the UK and to British visitors, welcome back. But holiday firms are warning it won't be enough to save the summer.
It's going to be too late for the peak season. It's a very blunt instrument to use quarantine in the way that it has been used, and people have been extremely nervous of travelling anywhere during August.
And from 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, anyone visiting Croatia, Austria and Trinidad and Tobago will now have to quarantine for 14 days when they reach the UK. It follows a rise in the rate of coronavirus infections in those countries. They join other holiday destinations, including Spain and France, to which the Foreign Office advises against all non-essential travel. In Croatia, there's sun, sea, and now stress for those aiming to get home before the deadline.
I should have been going to France last weekend, and due to the quarantine on France, I changed my flight to Croatia. My daughter's fiancé and his family all live here, but she booked me a flight home tomorrow in case this did happen.
Many of the 20,000 British tourists in Croatia will also be heading to the airport. Others, though, are resigned to isolation when they return to the UK.
I think we'll just stay and then go back and then have to quarantine.
And with the British government prepared to add or remove countries from its list of travel corridors at short notice, it's not the easiest time for those looking to get away from it all. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Helen Catt, who's in Westminster for us. Morning, Helen. We're talking to the Transport Minister, Grant Shapps, in about an hour and a half. And it's very clear, isn't it, that if you're going on holiday now, you need to keep a close eye on these quarantine rules because they are changing frequently.
Yes, this is a pretty established pattern now, isn't it? We've seen it happen with Belgium, the Netherlands, with France last week, with Spain. This idea that somewhere where you could go and visit without having to quarantine on your return, that can change very quickly and you might find that you have to. Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary in England last night, drawing particular attention to that in a tweet, saying only travel if you are content to unexpectedly 14-day quarantine if required. Of course, not just a case of being content, it's also being able to, isn't it? For some people, that's just not not going to be a possibility. But Portugal, I think, is the first country we've seen, that the really first most significant country we've seen to go the other way and say, well, you can now go there without having to quarantine. The Portuguese government, of course, quite cross that they weren't on the original list of exemptions back in July, saying then it was a decision that was neither substantiated nor supported by the facts. So that will be a relief, I think, for the Portuguese government. But as you heard, there's some concern around the timings.
Helen, thanks very much. Helen Catt there in Westminster. Of course, as I mentioned, we are going to talk to the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps at 7:30.
US presidential candidate Joe Biden has promised to lead his country out of what he calls the darkness of its years under Donald Trump.
In a speech to the Democratic Party's National Convention, Mr. Biden said he would restore American values like decency, science and democracy. Our correspondent David Willis has more.
This was the nomination Joe Biden had sought for so long, having run for president unsuccessfully twice before.
So it's with great honor and humility I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
Earlier on the final night of the convention, tribute was paid to the Democratic congressman and civil rights icon John Lewis, who fought alongside Martin Luther King for the right to vote.
Will they be stolen from mailboxes as they get put in by the mailman? Will they be taken from the mailmen and the mailwomen?
The unifying force at this Democratic convention had been Donald Trump, whether it was ridiculing him or branding him a threat to American democracy. But on the final night, the early emphasis was on stressing their candidate's empathy through the story of a teenager whom he helped overcome a stutter.
And without Joe Biden, I wouldn't be talking to you today.
I'm Beau Biden, and Joe Biden is my dad.
And linking his own heart-wrenching story to the lives of millions of Americans suffering problems of their own. Biden lost his son Beau to brain cancer 5 years ago, his first wife and young daughter in a car accident 43 years before that.
I have some idea how it feels to lose someone you love. I know that deep black hole that opens up in the middle of your chest and you feel like you're being sucked into it. I know how mean and cruel and unfair life can be sometimes.
A feature of this unconventional convention has been that instead of a background of cheering crowds, speeches have been delivered via video link from largely empty event centres in different parts of the country. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris intend to continue campaigning mostly virtually. The final 10 weeks of this presidential campaign are shaping up to be one of the strangest ever. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Nurses are feeling overstretched and undervalued, with nearly half saying they have considered quitting the profession since the pandemic began. That's according to a large survey by the Royal College of Nursing. Nearly 42,000 nurses responded to the survey. 3/4 of them reported experiencing more stress, and a third said they'd been given extra responsibility, but mostly without higher pay. The Department of Health said it's committed to supporting all NHS staff.
Officials in Birmingham are concerned that the city could face tougher restrictions or a local lockdown. It's after a steep rise in coronavirus infections, which have doubled since the start of the month. The leader of Birmingham City Council described the increase as extremely concerning and urged residents to pull together.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.